Hello, everybody. This is Fungus, and I welcome you back to our second installment of Fungus News, where we talk everything about the CDC's most winning division. During week two of this Cobalion's division, most people either were trying to get off to an early lead, going 2-0, or were trying to right the wrongs during their first week. Now, for our first matchup, we have the Michigan Manectrics coached by Tog versus the All-Seeing coached by Renelin. The Manectrics brought a team of Mousehold, Heatran, Zekrom, Pillowswine, Shaman Sky, and Mew, while the All-Seeing brought a team of Lugia, um, King's Gambit, Fortress, Kyurem Black, Gastrodon, and the Galarian Zapdos. Now, this matchup can be described in two words: Galarian Zapdos. Galarian Zapdos put in the finest of work this week, being able to break through pretty much the entirety of the Michigan Manectrics team. Pretty much nothing could switch in on it. The Michigan Manectric's best switch in apparently was that Pillowswine, which obviously takes super effective damage from close combat, which does not bode well for the Manectrics, as if their best switch in is a super effective is hits super effectively against the opponent's biggest threat, it's not going to end well, and that's exactly what happened. The All-Seeing were just able to kind of just beat up pretty much every Pokemon on their opponent's team. Pretty much everything died. Nothing was able to live. The only time the Michigan Manectrics really found any success was being able to sub up with their Zekrom, but other than that, it really was a one-sided beatdown. It felt as though the Michigan Manectrics just either didn't prep it well enough or just had no answers for the All-Seeing's team. So because of that, the All-Seeing cruised to a comfortable 4-0 victory, which they needed because they did lose their first week. Um, our next matchup is between the Santa Maria Absols, coached by Fearix, and then the Philadelphia Smeargles, coached by Fungus. Now, the Santa Maria Absols brought a team of Lunala, Alomomola, Garganacl, Iron Valiant, Porygon 2, and Drifblim, while the Smeargles brought a team of Gliscor, um, Hydreigon, Fluttermane, Solgaleo, Vaporeon, and finally Hariyama. Both teams were able to win their first matchup, so they were both looking to advance into a comfortable position going into week three. Early on, the game's pace was set as an early scare for the Smeargles came in the form of an Agility Lunala. However, after being roared out by a Vaporeon into the Garganacl, um, the Smeargle switched into their Gliscor, pretty much let it die, however, but was able to get up 3 layers of spikes, and as the Absols didn't have any form of hazard removal, those spikes were going to be left on the field for the entire duration of the match. Afterwards, the Haria came in and broke a lot of holes into the opponent's walls, doing lots of damage to the Garganacl, doing lots of damage to the Alomomola, and also being able to kill both of the Drifblim and the Porygon 2, um, leaving the Santa Maria Absols with very little options to defend against the oncoming Fluttermane, who set up a Calm Mind and was able to sweep the rest of the Absols team. It was a very quick match, very decisive, and the Smeargles were able to move into a comfortable 2-0 with a +7 differential going into week 3. Our next matchup is the Virginia Verbavas, coached by Jeremy, versus the legendary Landorus, coached by Grandmaster Cake. The Virginia Verbavas were looking for their first win in this season. We're looking for it very big because you don't really want to go 0-2 starting off, and the legendary Landorus were looking to keep a streak going. Now, the Virginia Verbavas brought a team of Chen Pao, Primarina, Annihilate, Iron Shreds, Malamar, and finally Arcaludon, while the legendary Landorus brought a team of Thundurus Incarnate, Urshifu, Mewtwo, Scizor, Quagsire, and finally Hisuian Avalugg. Now this matchup started off pretty hot, both able to do big damage to some of their threats, mainly the Primarina and the Thundurus Incarnate doing big damage to each other. And then after a few switches, it came down to a matchup between Hisuian Avalugg and Malamar. Malamar was able to get up a Trick Room and also get a few superpowers off, which boosted its attack and defense, making it very bulky and very threatening. However, the Hisuian Avalugg was able to get a few Iron defenses up, which allowed it to tank a lot of the hits Malamar was dishing out. Now, even with now Malamar was going for a few Psycho Cuts, and unfortunately for the Vibravas, the Psycho Cuts were never able to actually crit the Hisuian Avalugg, meaning that the Hisuian Avalugg was able to take down the Malamar pretty easily. Um, Afterwards, after a few switches, the both teams were able to get a few kills. The Premium Mini was able to get the first kill and the only kill of the Vibravas on the Quagsire, while the Mewtwo was able to get a kill on the Annihilate. Um, the Thundurus was also able to finish off the job it started earlier, being able to finally finish off the Primarina. However, because of the lack of special attackers the Vibravas had, it was almost impossible for them to break through that Hisuian Avalugg, and after he was able to set up a few more iron defenses, after a crit on the Arcaludon, it was able to kill it in one hit, and then the Chien-Pao and the Iron Shreds were the only two Pokemon remaining, were not able to break through the actual iron defense of the Hisuian Avalugg, and the Hisuian Avalugg was able to pick up the final two kills, picking up 4 kills this week, which is a big surprise because it is more of a defensive Pokemon. Um, but yes, a big win for the legendary Landorus, moving them up to 2 wins, 0 losses, and a +7 differential. Our fourth matchup of the week is the Ellesmere Eternals, coached by Kung Fu Panda, versus the Russian Rapidashes, coached by Martin. Both of these teams were looking for their first win of the season, so they both were looking to come prepared. Now, the Ellesmere Eternals came in with a team of Zacian, Darkrai, Keldeo, Metagross, Landorus Incarnate, and finally Tsareena, while the Russian Rapidashes came in with a team of Skeleturge, Corviknight, Kommo-o, Clodsire, Deoxys, Normal, and finally Greninja. Now this matchup was pretty even at the beginning, both going back and forth, not drawing first blood until turn 16, where Clodsire was actually able to finish off the Keldeo with an Earthquake. However, the Clodsire was weakened very much by the Keldeo, who surprisingly did a lot of damage with Secret Sword at +1, actually at +2 I think, by this point, before it died, and was revenge killed by the Zacian, which would actually open up opportunities for other Pokemon later on. Now, the now at some point it came to a matchup between the Darkrai versus the Deoxys Normal, which turned out that Deoxys Normal actually had Substitute and the Darkrai had Sucker Punch. As Darkrai went for Sucker Punch, Deoxys Normal went for Substitute, meaning that it was safe behind its Substitute and was unable to be hit. Now, unfortunately, the Deoxys did not have any ways of actually damaging this Darkrai. The only move it could go for was really Knockoff, which meant that the Darkrai could easily break the sub and then kill it off with another Dark Pulse or a Sucker Punch if it so pleased. The Deoxys went for another Substitute, meaning that putting it underneath putting it at like 18%, which meant that it could not go for any more substitutes as its item was the Life Orb. This means that it was forced to switch out into Kommo-o, which earlier on was actually slept by the Darkrai as it had Hypnosis. Now, Darkrai also had coverage for this Kommo-o in the form of Ice Beam, which meant that the Kommo-o was able to be two-shot by the Darkrai with the help of Bad Dreams. Afterwards, this Darkrai stayed on the field for a solid 9 turns, being able to not only, and as I said before, it actually hit at Hypnosis. It hit yet another one against the Corviknight, making it fall asleep as well, meaning that the only check that one of the only checks that the Russian Rabidashes had against this Darkrai is now fast asleep. This would cause it to take another Dark Pulse and then be forced to switch out into Greninja, which then finally the Darkrai switches out into Tsareena, which was able to take the Greninja's attack and kill it off. Now afterwards, the Metagross was in against a Skeleturge. The Eternals decided here to sack off their Metagross to be able to get a free switch into their Landorus, which was able to scare off the Skeleturge, where Landorus went for U-turn, going back into the Darkrai, and at this point Darkrai was able to hit a Dark Pulse, and then once again Hax comes in Dark pulls the Skeledirge and flinch it, which at this range was able to two-shot the Skeledirge and finish it off. Now the Deoxys is only at 3%. It cannot go for Substitute. Sucker Punch will always be available as an option. And because of this, the Darkrai was able to pick its fourth and final kill of the match, leading to a solid 4-0 victory for the Eternals against the Rapidashes. Our fifth matchup of the week was played between the London Vespiquen coached by Jake and the Kerry Wisps coached by Don Bozo. Both of them had won their first match. However, the London Vespiquens won their match through disqualification, so they were still trying to prove themselves as a coach this season. However, this match, as our great host said, Staniel said, Don Bozon is in his bag lately. So now for the teams, the London Vespiquens brought a team of Giratina Altered, Meowscarada, Terrapagos, Slowking Hisuian, Alolan Sandslash, and finally Palafin. And the Carrywis brought a team of Magearna, Dragapult, Sandy Shocks, Morgrim, Sneasler, and finally Blastoise. Now, this match was pretty evenly contested for the first 7 turns. However, first blood was drawn by the Alolan Sandslash after the Slowking went for a chilling reception. Slush Rush Slash was able to set up a Sword Stance and actually kill off Magearna, which was a huge kill this early in the game. However, the Carrywis was able to quickly bounce back with a Scarf Sneasler and was able to revenge kill the Alolan Sandslash. Giratina came in and was actually looking pretty scary for a while, being able to set up a few Calm Minds. However, Morgrem was able to kind of match its energy with a few nasty plots of its own, being able to go to toe with it until even forcing the Giratina to rest, even after setting up, I think, 4 Calm Minds, which is absolutely insane for a pre-evolution to do to a box legendary. However, the Giratina was able to finally kill off the Morgrem after a few Shadow Balls, but this allowed the Dragapult to come in and revenge kill the Giratina. And actually, unfortunately for the London Vespiquens, there was really nothing that could switch into a Dragapult. The Meowscarada had already taken a lot of damage from a Choice Spec Sandy Shocks Earth Power that was also boosted by Terra on top of it. So the Meowscarada wasn't really a check anymore for it. Terrapagos could be used. However, the Terrapagos would be used. However, the Terrapagos, after taking the first Dragon Darts, would get crit by the second one and then die shortly after. This forced the Slowking to come in, but take a lot of damage from Dragon Darts, forcing it to once again switch out into Meowscarada, which died to Spikes. This, however, allowed the back to health Slowking to come back into the Dragapult and finally scare it out. However, Blastoise was easily able to come in and take an Ice Beam, which Don Bozo then pretty boldly switched out into his Sandy Shocks and was able to kill off the Slowking Galar. And the Choice Specs Sandy Shocks was actually able to take a Jet Punch and kill off the Palafin, meaning that the Carrywis were able to win their second matchup of the season, 4-0 against the London Vespiquens. The final match and this week's match of the week was played between the Trondheim Rosenspores, coached by Hydra, and the Defenders of Staliwrath, coached by Staniel. Now, this matchup was very entertaining, mainly because of the shifts in momentum that were going on throughout the match, and also because this week Staniel decided to pump his Pokemon with lots of steroids. Now, straight off the bat, Moltres was able to pick up a huge critical hit against the Clefable, making it so that the Clefable wasn't really able to do its job as effectively as it usually would be able to. Not only this, but a few turns later was able to dodge a Gunk Shot from a Sneasel, which actually later on would reveal to do about 48%, meaning that miss actually mattered quite a bit. Once the Sneasel went down, the Spectrier came in, and usually Spectrier sets are going to be Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse or whatever, pretty basic. However, this set was absolute heat. I will give it credit where credit is due, which also added to why I think this is match of the week. A Curse substitute Spectrier, which is absolutely insane. Curse is already a pretty garbage move on its own, but you pair it with Substitute, and you're just waiting for your Pokemon to die at that point. However, it actually worked very well against the Stoliwrath's Ursaluna, which got it down to very low HP at 50% before it decided to switch out. Now, even with that being said, the Ursaluna did switch out into Giratina Origin, and as they were doing that, the Spectrier was switched out into Clefable for a sack. So because of this, the Giratina Origin was actually able to pick up a kill there, meaning that the Stoliwrath were actually able to get off to a pretty solid start of 2-0. I mean, 6-4. Afterwards, the Extra Drill came in, threatening it out, and then the Moltres came in to try and um, not take damage from an earthquake as the Spectrier came in and Pain Split away, which meant that it was actually able to get back into the range that I would be able to curse, which it goes for and actually catches once again the Ursaluna with a curse, which meant that the Ursaluna was going to die in 2 turns. Now I will say and I do think Hydra doesn't make a mistake here, going into its Excadrill, which does die to the Ursaluna, which I do think Excadrill was a pretty important mod by that point. Soon after, it comes down to a matchup between Zamazenta Crown versus Ho-Oh, which seems like a bad matchup for the Zamazenta Crown. However, it is packing Stone Edge, which means that it is able to easily kill the Ho-Oh after taking a Sacred Fire. Obviously, it had to land, which it did. Then the Hydrapple was able to come in, set up a nasty plot. It did take a lot of damage, however, it was able to um, bait in a close combat as it went for Terra Ghost this time, and Hydra did not mess up the Terra. And actually, it did have Rocky Helmet, meaning that it was able to chip down the Zamazenta Crown all the way down to 0%. However, this meant that the Ogerpon Cornerstone was able to come in and knock off and hit a critical hit on the Hydrapple, which was huge. Actually mattered quite a bit because it probably wouldn't have killed with the second one. However, um, because of this, it was able to kill off the Hydrapple. Spectri comes in, and honestly, it could have potentially finished off the fight. Moltres was at pretty good HP, but if it got a crit, maybe it could have been able to finish off the match. However, after it kills the Ogerpon Cornerstone, Giratina comes in, and it is packing the Shadow Sneak, which does finish off the Spectrier, meaning that the Stoliwraths were able to win 3-0 over the Trondheim Rosenspores. Now on to the kill leaders. First we have Reshiram. It was not brought this week. However, in the first week it was able to pick up 2 kills and did not die once. So because of that, it was actually able to keep its spot in the top 10 with 2 kills and 0 deaths. Next we have Sneasler. Um, also getting 2 kills and 0 deaths. I think I picked up on 1 kill this week. It's the second game played, so it's pretty consistent so far, getting 1 kill in each week. Next up, we have a Pokemon that hasn't got any kills in its first week. However, was able to pick up 2 this week, which was the Menace that was Choice Specs Sandy Shocks. It was played in both games, but this game it really did shine. Next up, we've got the Hydreigon. It was played in both games. However, this time it did not actually even touch the field once. But even then, its first week's the show in the first week was super strong. So because of that, it was able to stick on the leaderboard, just not at first anymore. Drop of 5 places. Next up, we've got Ogerpon Cornerstone picking up another kill this week. However, also picking up a death, meaning that it only gets 6th place here. It's played in both matches, so there's that. Next up, we've got the Dragapult. It was able to pick up 2 kills this week, so it is a newcomer on this list. Being played in both matchups, picking up 1 kill in the first week, and then picking up 2 afterwards. Next up, we've got the Stoliwrath's Giratina with 3 kills, however 0 deaths, meaning it is in 5th place. Next up, we've got the All-Seeing's Galarian Zapdos picking up all of its kills in this week, going 4-0 this week, going absolutely nuts on this second week. Next up, we've got the Elismir Eternals Darkrai, picking up 5 kills and dying once, but that death was in the first week. It went absolutely nuts in this matchup, so because of that, it was able to pick up third on the kill leaderboard. A very surprising Pokemon, Hisuian Avalugg, um, also absolutely went insane this week, picking up 4 kills, um, bringing up its total to 5 kills and 0 deaths. Surprisingly, has not died this week in this season. So it does get that +5 differential. And in first place, once again, is the Philadelphia Smeargles. Just a great coach, obviously, um, with its Flutter Mane, picking up 4 kills as well. Lots of 4 kill Pokemon this week. With 6 kills and 1 death, it was able to take the top spot. Now, for our Mon of the Week, it was very difficult to choose. There's a lot of Pokemon that were able to pick up 4 kills. The Galarian Zapdos, the Hisuian Avalugg, the Fluttermane, um, even the Darkrai. Even some Pokemon that didn't really pick up 4 kills could have been in contention, like the Hariyama, who was able to break super massive holes into the opponent's defense, and also the Sandy Shocks, who was just an absolute menace every single time it went on the field, also breaking lots of holes. However, I decided that this week the top spot should go to Darkrai. Hitting 2 Hypnosises back to back already puts you in contention for MVP. Not only that, but it was able to pick up not 6 kills, 4 kills, um, 2 of them being against its own checks. Just an absolute incredible performance. Really, it could have gone to a lot of other Pokemon, but I felt as though the fact that it was able to hit 2 Hypnosises back to back made this very justified. Now, to finish off the episode, we're going to talk about the trades and transactions. First off, the Philadelphia Smeargles have decided to drop 4 of their Pokemon. Their Solgaleo, the Sceptile, the Magneton, and surprisingly enough, their Hydreigon. Even with its first week's showing, they decided to drop it, picking up the Dialga, Ogerpon, Heartflame, Hisuian Quillfish, and Electabuzz. Now, if you want more details, they do have a YouTube channel that they talk in detail about why they decided to pick up or drop certain Pokemon. But really, the gist of it is that the team didn't really have a lot of Stealth Rockers, and this aids them with their hazards. So because of that, they decided to make some switches on their team. And next up, the Trondheim Rosenspores make a huge shift, dropping Clefable, Ho-Oh, Gyarados, Bellibolt, Sneasel, Hisuian, Sneasel, and also Duosion, picking up Sylveon, Zamazenta, Tentacruel, Iron Jugulis, Bronzong, Arboliva, and Stonejourner. At this point, the Rosenspores most likely felt as though their team just did not fit them at all, and felt as though they did need a switch, which I do agree, they probably did need a switch. It did not, and I'm not gonna lie, having 3 different not fully evolved Pokemon is not the best, and then having 2 Pokemon that are basically the exact same Pokemon and fit the exact same role is also not the exact best idea. So I do think this is a smart idea from the Rosenspores. Um, and that is it for this week. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.